Let's begin. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nevin Cohen, and I'm on the faculty at the CUNY Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy. And I'm also the director of the CUNY Urban Food Policy Institute. And it's really my pleasure to welcome you to this month's Urban Food Policy Forum. We have public forums every month, and I'm delighted that you're attending this one. And I wanted to mention before I go on that we're having another forum next month, which I hope you'll find the time to join. It's a book talk, a really exciting and interesting book called Resilient Kitchens, American Immigrant Cooking in a Time of Crisis. And we have several authors who contributed to this book, and a really interesting topic dealing with migration, immigration, and the role of cooking, cuisine, and kitchens in the integration of people into society. So I hope you'll join us on June 24th at 11:30 a.m. on Zoom. The Urban Food Policy Institute is a research center at the CUNY School of Public Health that aims to support healthy, resilient, and just urban food systems. And we work on a number of issues, and we've been delighted to work with Citymeals on a project that focuses on food support needs for older adults. The topic of today's forum, we're going to present the results of some research that we did with Citymeals, a report that we produced called Aging Without Hunger, Ending Food Insecurity for Older New Yorkers by 2040. And then we'd like to open the discussion with experts in the needs of older adults for food and nutrition support. Today's panel includes Katie Tomeno-Frazier, who's our Director of Evaluation at the CUNY Urban Food Policy Institute, a public health expert and a registered dietitian. We have Singh, who's the Vice President for Older Adult Services at Henry Street Settlement, one of the oldest settlement houses in New York City. Allison Rosenthal, Chief Program Officer for the West Side Campaign Against Hunger, one of the largest and most innovative emergency food providers in New York City. And last but not least, our colleague, Jeanette Estima, who's the Director of Policy and Advocacy at Citymeals on Wheels. And their full bios are either linked in the chat or available for people in the audience to have a look at. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the forum over to Katie, who will be presenting some of the top-level findings of the research that we conducted with Citymeals. So thanks so much. I also want to mention that please hold on to your questions in your mind, and toward the end of the forum, we'll open up the chat so that you can post questions. We want this to be an interactive session, so please post your questions about 20 minutes before the end of the forum, and we'll try to get to as many audience questions as possible. Thanks. So Katie, take it from here.
Thanks, Nevin. Good morning, everyone. This study of older adult hunger and food services and SNAP participation in New York City is over a year in the making with our partners at Citymeals. So I'm really excited to share the highlights with you today, and Rosita will be sharing additional resources in the chat. So when we set out to do this study, we really had two main aims. The first was to assess the adequacy of existing food assistance services for older adult New Yorkers. We wanted to understand their needs and preferences for nutrition assistance, how satisfied they are with these services. We wanted to understand more about their decision to participate in nutrition assistance programs and also the barriers that they experience. And we wanted to hear from them about alternative desired services. So in a universe where we could do anything, what would you like to see happen? We also wanted to explore opportunities for expanding home delivered meals for older adults and ways to improve both home delivered meal and grocery services. So what did we do? We sat down with Citymeals, we designed and tested survey and focus group tools in an iterative process. We had oversight from the CUNY Institutional Review Board, which oversees ethical interaction with human subjects. And importantly, we incentivized older adults to participate and to share information with us, to share their perspectives with us. They received, depending on the modality, either physical or electronic Visa gift cards. For a survey, $40, and for focus group, $80. With the Citymeals network of partners, we recruited older adults to engage with us. So for surveys, we targeted the 5 most frequently spoken languages in the city: English, Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, and Russian. And we used phone lists for home delivered meal providers to make phone calls to homebound adults. And we also recruited in person on site at a sample of 7 congregate meal sites. So we had research assistants in the field talking to older adults where they convene and where they eat. We did this on iPads and laptops. Some more tech-savvy older adults use their mobile phones or desktop computers at older adult centers. For the focus groups, we did these in English. The sessions lasted about 60 minutes. And we did this at 3 centers in person, and we did 1 Zoom session specifically for homebound folks. And we recruited these folks with the support of older adult centers who have frequent contact with these individuals. So how did we do? Who did we reach? Our survey reached 500 older adult New Yorkers age 60 and up, and the focus groups reached 35 individuals in the same age range. Our response language distribution is here. Again, that was intentionally to target and replicate those 5 most frequently spoken languages. Our age distribution, you'll see it's not a particularly old group, and it pretty closely mirrors the way that the age breakdown of older adults in New York City is, with some slight variation. Our race and ethnicity breakdown is here. We oversampled both Asian and Latinx New Yorkers and slightly undersampled Black and white New Yorkers. 70.4% were female, and 65% had an annual income of less than $15,000 a year. So this is a low income group. We asked folks for their zip code, where do you live? And you can see this breakdown here. We didn't reach every zip code, but we got pretty close, cast a pretty wide net, and you can see kind of the concentrations. I think the concentrations here reflect those areas where we went in person to congregate sites. So these are neighborhoods surrounding those sites. What did we learn about them? This is a food insecure group among all participants, and I'll do this throughout the presentation. I'll share some data points that reflect the whole group and some data points that reflect just those who are home delivered meals users, which is a smaller proportion of the full sample. Among all participants, 44.8% sometimes or often worried food would run out before they had money to get more, and 42% sometimes or often said the food we bought just didn't last. We use the USDA Food Insecurity Screener to collect this data. This is a standard method to collect food insecurity information. And among home delivered meals users, these stats they're higher. We asked folks, how do you get to the store where you most frequently purchase your groceries? 51% of them walk, 16% use public transportation. We asked them to estimate how long does it take to get to where you shop, round trip. And folks let us know that on average, they spend 40 minutes getting to the grocery store where they most frequently purchase their groceries. So if you're thinking about most people walking, taking about 40 minutes of time in a population of older adults, that was surprising to me. That was more time walking to the grocery store than I would have imagined. In terms of food access and food supports, almost half of folks did not have family or friends who could provide meals for them at least once a day. Among those who did have that support, 22% reported that this was not enough to meet their food needs, so that they still had gaps to fill after receiving support from family or friends. And individuals who lack the support from friends or family were more likely than their peers to report sometimes or often experiencing food insecurity. We asked folks about their capacity for preparing meals at home. 17% report never being able to shop for groceries. 16% report never being able to wash and prepare food. 21% do not always have access to cooking facilities. And these are some of the physical barriers to preparing food at home. But in focus groups, people really also spoke quite extensively about the mental barriers to preparing food at home. They talked about how it's a hassle. It means you have to think. It requires mental energy that they just don't feel like they have, on any given day. Many folks described the sentiment of trying to make things as easy as possible. I can boil an egg, I can make some rice, but maybe that's the extent of what I feel like doing because of physical or mental capacity. We asked folks about their use of food services. 77% were eating at older adult centers, not surprising since we were recruiting from older adult centers. 23% received home delivered meals. 17.6% were using food pantries or food box pickup, and almost 4% using some sort of technologically influenced mobile pantry or grocery delivery service. Folks are satisfied with their use of these services to a pretty high degree. Here you see the breakdown of folks' satisfaction, reporting that they were satisfied or very satisfied with the quantity, quality, or types of foods. And you see the breakdown by congregate and home delivered sites. So high levels of satisfaction. We asked folks who were home delivered meal users about the influence that participating in the program has on their life. 86% report that home delivered meals helps them to stay where they're living. 63% report that it helps them to eat more than they would otherwise. 80% say that it helps them to manage one or more health conditions. So some real victories here, I think. We also asked folks to imagine that there was a new program providing home delivered meals for adults in New York City. So this is the full sample of folks, not just home delivered meals users. Nearly 70% of them prefer to receive home delivered meals at least a few times a month. So they said, I don't need it every day, but a couple of times a month, it would be really, really useful. And among current home delivered meals participants, 53% would be interested in receiving 2 or more meals on weekdays and weekends. So that's more than they're currently receiving. Interestingly, 54% reported an interest in receiving home delivery of groceries through an expanded home delivered food program. We asked about their SNAP use. 56% of respondents report receiving SNAP. We also asked whether they use that SNAP to buy groceries online. Only 6% said that they did. Among non-participants in SNAP, 55% were not sure if they were eligible, and 8% know that they qualify for SNAP, but had not yet applied for it. So I think there's some real opportunities there to engage this population in what we know is, a really important food assistance program. Coming to the end of my slides, and then I'll open it up to the panel. This study includes a large, diverse group of older adult New Yorkers, and it oversamples previously underrepresented groups. It documents high rates of food insecurity, and it indicates an interest in expanding services for home delivered meals. It also documents, as I just said, a high degree of uncertainty related to SNAP. It also documents low participation in food pantry programs in a population with most individuals earning less than $15K annually. And so this is, again, I think is a real opportunity. More than 50% of respondents expressing an interest in grocery delivery. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge all of the organizations that really helped us conduct this large study, and our team of CUNY research assistants in the field speaking to older adults every day. We really appreciate you all, and this work wouldn't have been possible without you. So thanks.
Thanks, Katie. And of course, this work wouldn't have been possible without you. So thanks for your hard work in putting this together. A lot of interesting information that Katie presented. I'd like to open the discussion to all the panelists. And the first question I have is, which of the findings either surprised you the most, or if you're not surprised by them, you think are important metrics to influence our way of thinking about the needs of older adults and programs as they develop. You're all experts on this population and nutrition programs. Why don't we start with you, Allison? And I'll come to Jeanette at the end. Would you like to lead us off? Is anything that piqued your interest or you thought was a surprising or interesting finding?
Yeah, thanks, Nevin, and thanks, Katie. Just happy to be part of this panel, so thanks for having me. For those who don't know me, I'm Allison Rosenthal. I'm the Chief Program Officer and Registered Dietitian at the Westside Campaign Against Hunger. We are a 45-year-old organization that's been working on the front lines to fight hunger by ensuring all New Yorkers have access with dignity to a choice of healthy food and supportive services. I would say that this report, as you mentioned, Nevin, it wasn't necessarily the findings shocking to me, being that, we are working on the front lines of hunger day in and day out. At WISCA, or the Westside Campaign Against Hunger, we are seeing record numbers of households coming out for food and services. Just to give you an example, we are seeing 50% more people coming out than even just last year, and 3 times more than before the pandemic. So we're just seeing hunger go up as opposed to maybe a leveling off from the pandemic. We're seeing greater numbers than during even the peak of that pandemic. So to see that nearly 50% of those surveyed are experiencing food insecurity wasn't shocking, but it's certainly disgraceful in one of the richest cities in the world that our seniors are going without meals or at risk of, feel like they don't have a consistent source of food. But what I will say, what stood out to me from the data was that over more than half were interested in receiving groceries home delivered. And so, I think this is really important. And, after, having worked in this space for 2 decades, I think what I've learned over my career is that the best way to meet the needs of the community is for us to work in collaboration. And actually that's what Citymeals and WISCA have been doing for 7 years now. We have been working in collaboration to make sure that right now it's fairly small scale given the need, but we're providing home delivered groceries via Citymeals to 350 homebound seniors. And so when I read this report, it just sparked sort of a call of action to me, and I actually reached out to the leadership at Citymeals, and we actually have a meeting on the calendar in the next couple of weeks to really brainstorm and figure out how can we work together to make sure that those seniors that can handle groceries at home, how can we work together to make sure that they have what they need? And again, I think what I've also learned over my career is that there's not necessarily a need to duplicate infrastructure. And WISCA recently opened up a new warehouse facility where we have a large capacity to handle fresh product. We have at least 40 pallets of refrigeration storage. And, Citymeals has an incredible warehousing space that we've also co-located at for many years. But their specialty is more on the prepared meals and the shelf stable product. And so how can we work together to utilize both of our infrastructure to get the right food to the people who need it? And I think there's certainly ways that we could be working together to help those seniors who want groceries get it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think if this prompts further collaboration in terms of programming and also infrastructure, that would be really, really important. Cindy, did you identify any particular findings that you thought were important or interesting to highlight?
Hi, I'm Cindy, Vice President of Older Adult Services. We have 2 nutrition programs here at Henry Street that serves older adults. I didn't find any of this surprising. Oddly enough, these in my 16 years of working with older adults, both with home delivered meals and congregate setting, they've always asked for additional food items. They've always requested food outside of what we currently offer. And it just kind of allowed us to collaborate with pantry programs to provide those meals. So Citymeals is one of our partners that we are able to provide additional food items for our homebound clients. We've partnered with Food Bank to do that for our congregate site. But even with providing that, whenever there's a large pocket of folks that are always asking for additional meals. We'll find our congregate center has 2 programs where we do a lunch and a dinner. A lot of them kind of wait around towards the end of the meal service to see if there's anything left over. That's a new thing we just realized or noticed happening in the last couple of years. So trying to find how to give them more access to food is something that we're always trying to do.
Thank you. And Leslie, Jeanette, the idea for this research came from you and Citymeals. What are the important findings from the report for your organization?
Yeah, thanks, Nevin. I want to echo what Allison and Cindy have said. It wasn't that what we saw was very surprising, but it was the scale of it that I think did take me at least aback a bit. We knew that anecdotally that there was a lot of hunger in this community, but we had very little in the way of data to actually describe the experience of the people that we serve, because they're often underrepresented in the existing research, right? Homebound older adults can be harder to reach. And we also know that about half of the city's older adults are foreign born. So there are language barriers that can also make them hard to reach. So we knew that it was time to really learn more about this population. And we did want to specifically target folks that we were serving and that we think are underrepresented. From about over a decade ago, we had done some research that showed that about 14% of our home delivered meals recipients relied on the 1 meal per day that they were receiving through the program. And we expected to see that this was going to be a much higher number, given what we've seen since the pandemic and the rising level of food insecurity that Allison and Cindy have mentioned. So we did expect to see that. We expected it to be higher. It was one of the reasons we did this study. But, the 50 and 60% figures that we saw were just staggering. That was really hard to see. And similarly, I've said, a million times that older adults can't often make it to a food pantry, right? And even if they can, they may not be able to get a lot of the kinds of foods that they can actually make use of. And I think, 18% is just much lower than what I expected, especially when, as Katie pointed out, this is such a group with such a low income, $15,000 a year or less. Food pantries are a key way to get more food, but if there's only 18% of people accessing them, that's a pretty big disconnect. So, at Citymeals, we've often pushed back against this really ageist tendency to classify older adults as either fully independent or extremely frail. And I think that this research really goes a long way to show how wrong that is, that, even if you can regularly make it to an older adult center and get your 1 meal each day, you're not necessarily able to regularly tend to all of your other nutritional needs. This really shone through the research for us. Aging is really a dynamic process, and we need to do better to craft our food programs according to those needs and not this, current one-size-fits-all model.
Great, thanks. And so, Jeanette, how are the findings from this research going to inform Citymeals advocacy and next steps for your programming?
Yeah, so the research really made clear to us that there's a need to take a good look at food programs all across the city, state, and federal levels, and really ensure that they're inclusive of the needs of older adults and that they're presenting a really comprehensive anti-hunger strategy. So, this means that the programs need to be physically accessible, right? That they're providing the kinds of foods that can be prepared and consumed by older adults. Root vegetables can be hard to handle and peel, or apples can be hard for some people to bite into, depending on their dental health. And of course, they also really need to be providing culturally appropriate types of foods. So this research really helped us hone in on, the areas that we think we can make the most impact. There's clearly a need for both more food and also more variety in the types of programs, right? And so, starting with the congregate and home delivered meals programs, these are the two main programs that target elder hunger, and it's clear that they're simply not comprehensive in addressing the problem. Why do these programs only offer one meal a day, 5 days a week, right? While it's true that not everybody needs 3 prepared meals each day, we see from the research that many need more than the one, and that they have limited access to other food programs. So we really need to do a lot stronger advocacy at the federal level to really update the Older Americans Act, which funds these programs, and really, has that 1 meal a day, 5 day a week stipulation in it. And so we really want to ensure that there's more funding put into the OAA to meet the rising need, right? We have a rapidly growing population. The program really needs to keep up with that. And in addition, it needs to provide more than just that 1 meal a day, 5 days a week, if that's what people need. And, I also just want to point out that I'm really focusing there because right now, the city really funds the lion's share of our congregate and home delivered meals programs, while the state and the federal government puts in very little money there. So I think that that's really an important area for advocacy. And we really need the feds and the state to pull their weight. And at the very least, home delivered meals programs need to account for the full nutritional needs of those who are eligible in order to meaningfully address hunger for this most vulnerable group of people. But, the research also showed us that not everybody needs a prepared meal, right? So we need to also look to expand the kinds of programs available to them, like grocery delivery programs, and make the existing programs like food pantries more accessible. We want to see additional funding for food pantries that can support home delivery. And, we're looking at partnerships with other pantries across the city, of course, like Wisca, who we've done so much with and who are great partners with us. And we really hope to be able to help pantries expand their reach. And I just also think we really need to grapple with the underutilization of SNAP, right? The data indicates that this population is very low income and there's really high rates of food insecurity. If only half or just over half of people are using SNAP, then there's a problem with SNAP. And so we really need to push for more automatic enrollment, really, really minimize any sort of renewal processes. And we really need to do better to overcome the stigma that is associated with receiving SNAP and other benefits, which runs really high in this particular population. This really is an afterthought in the outreach. It needs to be a necessary part of it.
Great, thank you, thank you. I wanted to turn back to the potential relationship between home delivered meals, congregate meals, and emergency food, and turn to Allison. How can we best get food insecure older adults, and particularly those who are largely homebound, more actively engaged with emergency feeding programs? I found the relatively low percentage of the those surveyed in, using emergency food pantries, an interesting finding. And I wonder, you began to talk about some collaborations, but could you tell us more about how to get this population engaged with the resources that your organization has?
Yeah, great. Yeah. So I think the key really is innovation and choice. I mean, I want to echo so much of what Jeanette just said, but it really is not a one size fits all approach. And I think the traditional models of food distribution, where people travel long distances to wait on incredibly long pantry lines, sometimes older adults and just community members are showing up hours before distribution even starts to then just wait on a long line where they're getting suboptimal food. And so it's just really not meeting the needs, especially of older adults who are more likely to have mobility issues, or they may have chronic diseases they're, struggling with, and just, have less of an ability to wait on those long lines and to then carry 20, I don't know, at Wisco, we give out 40 pounds of groceries. So to carry 40 pounds of groceries, up and down subway stairs and on a bus, it's just not meeting the needs of older adults. So, and this is why at Wisco, we're investing in new models of food distribution. We really believe that we need different choices for our community in terms of how they're getting their food, when they're getting their food, and where they're receiving it. I think for the last couple of decades, we've been focused on, whether someone wants an apple or an orange, but what about like if I want to receive that food delivered to my home, or what if I want to receive that food at one of my at my church or a local neighborhood location. And so some of the models that Wisca is expanding and really focusing our resources on is the home delivery aspect of our work. Right now, we have an incredible partnership with New York Presbyterian Hospital and Columbia University Medical Center, where this year we're going to be delivering to 3,000 households. They're getting 40 pounds of food twice a month, every other week. And that food is being delivered directly to their doors. Think about like the convenience of that for a senior. And these delivery drivers are willing to bring that food into their homes. So like if, really, helping seniors with some mobility or, issues of that nature, there are choices and ways that we can be doing this work better. Other models that Wisca is investing our resources into is, again, those hyper local neighborhood-based food distribution locations. So for 45 years, we've operated on the Upper West Side, and people have come from all across the city to our location because they know when they come to us, they're getting the best food, the freshest food. But we can be doing better, right? So increasingly, we're partnering with organizations, located close to where our customers are coming from, so that they don't need to make that long trip. So that they can feel comfortable and overcome some of the stigma by being, with their neighbors and with their friends, making it more of a community experience. Another area that we're interested in is is opening up some smart lockers. How could maybe we have a refrigerated smart locker near senior housing, where seniors can just come down to their lobby at their convenience and get food, or maybe their home health aide is helping them get that food, or a family member. But the idea is decreasing the barriers, making it easier for people to access the healthy foods that they deserve.
Thank you. Those are really, really great programmatic changes and innovations that Wisca and other organizations are really beginning to implement. I want to turn to the congregate meal programs and to you, Cindy. I was surprised to see the high level of satisfaction with congregate meals among the survey respondents, but it's no small task for congregate meal programs to, that feed hundreds of people each day to meet the strict nutritional standards that the city sets, and also provide culturally appropriate food that tastes delicious to people, and offers them the choices that they want, all within a relatively small budget. So how do you do it? And what kinds of resources do programs like the ones that you run need to make this happen?
How do we stay in budget? We don't, and we haven't in some years. Our budget does not account for like cost of inflation. And as everyone, including the seniors, go out and shop, food cost is really high. We try to balance it out as best as we can without compromising taste. We've also offered other options. So we have a grant that allows us to provide a salad bar, which gives our participants an opportunity, a choice, right? So if they're not interested in the meal that we're scheduled to serve, they have the option of having a healthy salad that has enough nutrition in it to hold them over. It is very challenging, especially with the city requirements. Our plant-based meals are not a big fan of our participants. Our average, we serve regularly is like about 100 folks a day. On a plant-based meal day, we get like 12. Obviously it's not something that they are interested in. I don't think that there's a standardized way for all communities. I think every program has its own way of tapping into their community and providing services that best fit the need of their community, however big or small that is. And when I say community, it's not necessarily like geographical area, right? Like we have seniors that come from Brooklyn that come to the Lower East Side to our center. They have made their community within our center. In terms of resources, funding, not only to cover the cost of food, but also to be able to kind of enhance what we're doing now, right? So we do this one meal a day for our programs, but maybe that one meal a day at that time isn't the best way to do it, right? Maybe we keep these other options available to us, like having a super salad or having a salad bar, or looking at it differently, because with the newer seniors aging into our programs, they don't want the kind of standardized, they have a very different lifestyle, they have a very different take on things, more of like a cafe type setting where they come, pick up meals and then leave. I feel like that's what we need to look towards, like evolving the programs more so than just staying with the same cookie cutter, repeat.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thanks. Allison, you mentioned some digital options. WSCA has a digital choice program, and you mentioned smart lockers. So our institute has been interested in the digitalization of food systems, and we've been doing research on online grocery ordering, other programs that use technology to enhance the distribution of food or access to food. What opportunities do technology, online ordering, and delivery offer to older New Yorkers, and particularly those who are food insecure? And in a population that traditionally experiences lower levels of tech literacy or may have access barriers due to lack of Wi-Fi, how can we ensure that as digital opportunities emerge, that those opportunities are able to be accessible to the populations that you're serving? So maybe I'll start with you, Jeanette, and then Allison, and then Cindy.
Yeah, thanks, Nevin. So I think that it's clear that there's a lot of opportunity with online ordering, right? I think people talked about, wouldn't it be great if there was a way that you could order the food you want and it would be delivered, right? That's exactly the sort of thing that online ordering can do. But I do also think it's important to recognize that for this group of folks, there's going to probably be a need for more support to make that something that they can start really using regularly. I think it's really telling that I think it was about 20% of the respondents had internet access, but just really didn't want to use it. You know, older adults are often prime targets for scams. They're constantly being told not to give out their information online. You know, a lot of them are going to be really wary of doing online grocery shopping. But I do think that there is a role for, you know, other community-based organizations to be a trusted source of support for that. Pardon. And you know, perhaps they can do something like offer assistance for those who do have internet access, right? Or at least have some technical literacy. They can perhaps have, you know, hotlines or people who can help them place orders. I think that would be helpful in alleviating some concerns around this sort of work. You know, I think that's, of course, harder to do for folks who are homebound or can't really make it to an older adult center to get that support. But all of these things, you know, we've seen what our partners in the older adult centers and other aging service providers they're able to do so much to really meet people where they're at. So I think that we need to acknowledge that there would be some need for those sorts of that level of assistance. You know, really also think about the ways that we might be able to work with, you know, the companies, online grocers, to make these sites easier to navigate for older adults, right? In a variety of ways, and also work with them perhaps to have certain offerings that are going to be more beneficial for older adults. And finally, I just want to acknowledge that online ordering can also be more expensive. And so there may need to be, you know, solutions that include, you know, waiving delivery fees or things like that, that can make that an option that older adults can use more easily.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a program in Baltimore called Baltimore Market that was a hybrid, allowing seniors to order online, but also providing a paper order form for those who didn't have the technical literacy to order through their computers or phones. And I, you know, wonder if over the next few years, as AI develops, natural language ordering, you know, could be a possibility for this population. But I want to turn to and ask the same question to Allison and then Cindy.
Yeah, great. Well, you know, what I keep thinking about is that, well, we all know technology and like online ordering, this is not going anywhere. And I think also as the current population ages, right? Like in 10 years, that population will have ordered groceries. Sorry, you know, I'm not far behind you, Nevin. But you know, in the not so distant future, people will be very accustomed to utilizing technology to order things like groceries and to make appointments and things of that nature. So at WISCA, we're certainly investing our resources into building up that infrastructure. And again, like, you know, it's never a one size fits all, right? And so we fully acknowledge that our online ordering system, you know, might not meet the needs of the current older population. And that's where I think, Jeanette, you touched on a few really important points, right? And so some of the things that we're doing at WISCA is, yes, like we always do our work in partnership with strong community partners that have trusted relationships with our participants. And so like having things like tablets at, you know, in the lobbies or, you know, at another community partner where seniors can be assisted, I think is key. I also think WISCA's online ordering system, over time, we've made, you know, some changes to it with the goal of making it as easy to use as possible. And, you know, it's very simple. It's text-based, and people are literally making our system is one that people are making two choices. And so they don't need to remember usernames or passwords. They don't need to have an email address. And those are some of the barriers to some of the more retail-based online ordering. We are also now setting it up where it's a subscription model. So basically, at the time of enrollment, you choose the type of food box that you want. And only if you want to change that food box on a future date, do you have to engage with the platform, engage with the online ordering, or you can also alternatively call our customer engagement team, and they can make those changes for you over the phone. So I think, again, it's about, trying to make the tools as easy as possible, working with partners to help facilitate ordering, and then, always having a strong customer service team. And I think that that's really like the role of WISCA and other emergency food providers, is to be that warm hand, to really help people get access to what they need with the least amount of stigma, and in the most dignified manner. Um, so, so I think, I think, like I'm saying, in 10 years, we're gonna have a very technologically sophisticated older adult population.
Thank you. Thanks. Cindy, at Henry Street, are you thinking about digital opportunities for food provision?
We've talked about it, but we're still having challenges with our participants using like the phone surveys. So like we use a one call system where, did you enjoy your meal today? Press 1, if not, press no. That's been very challenging. So we're not at the level yet to introduce technology. For what we're doing in our older adults programs right now is, for our senior center, we're training them on that level. So, if or when they age into the homebound, they have some knowledge of using like a smart device. But yeah, we're not at a point where we can utilize technology with a certain population.
Okay, thanks. Before we go on to the next question, I want to remind the people in the audience that we'll open up for Q&A after the next couple of questions. And so be prepared to enter questions into the chat, and then we'll pass them along to the participants for them to answer. But I'd like to follow on by asking a question about SNAP. And so we found in the study that SNAP participation is somewhat limited, and as Katie pointed out, it's such an important financial resource for older adults to tap into if they are eligible. What can the city and nonprofits like your organizations do to encourage more older adults who are eligible for SNAP to enroll in the program? Maybe I'll start with you, Cindy. Do you SNAP enrollment at Henry Street?
We do. We as soon as we do an intake, we do screen for benefits entitlements, including SNAP. Again, it's the individual's preference, right? So we also found the same reasons that you guys received in your study, that the shame, that it's too much of a hassle, the recertification process wasn't worth it. So even if we get them to the point where they go through the process, they have the SNAP, for some reason that recertification deters them from doing it again. Like, I have to do all of this all over again. We're trying now to see we have a tech help person on site to kind of use like the Amazon app to use their SNAP, to kind of pilot that and see if that would be something that would be opened up to everyone. That would be an incentive for them to apply for the SNAP, especially for the heavier items like bottled water, like heavier items that they're unable to carry. But that's something that we struggle to kind of on our end to get them on this program that's so helpful and beneficial for them.
And Jeanette, how about you at Citymeals? What ideas do you have for increasing the number of people who are enrolled in SNAP who are actually eligible?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is advocacy to be done to make the process better. I mean, I do believe that automatic enrollment for older adults should be a thing that happens. And it seems like it would be easy enough to do if they're already going through these programs and they're being assessed by their case managers. This is something that could easily be incorporated into that process. And, you know, in general, their circumstances are most likely not going to change, right? So even though they don't have to recertify as often as other folks who are under 65, why are we making them recertify even every 5 years? You know, their circumstances are unlikely to change, and there are ways to find out if they do change. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I really do think that the more steps there are in a process, the more difficult it's going to be to get people engaged and doing it. But I also think that the stigma is a really important piece. We saw so many comments in those open-ended answers, you know, that really displayed this sense of, people who felt that they weren't really in need, or, they're saying this despite also answering that they're running out of food. So I think there needs to be a lot of work in the outreach that is done in such a way that does not actually make people feel that they are, being a burden on the government, or, these are some of the words that they used, but that they are really taking on and participating in something that they are entitled to. People don't feel that way when they get their Social Security benefits. And I feel like it should be something like that. It's just another program that you are entitled to. And I think that's going to be critical in getting people to feel differently about it and make use of the program.
Thanks. And from WISCA's perspective, are there any innovations that you're trying to get more people to sign up for SNAP who are eligible?
So one of our core areas of work at WISCA is benefits access. So we do screen and enroll our community members on to SNAP and do all the recertifications. I think, again, like, part of what we do is we are doing the outreach. We're going out into communities. We go to our partner organizations. And we have set days where we're out there, where the folks who may be receiving our food can build that relationship with our SNAP enrollers. Because there is the stigma. But I think if you have more people who are trained in SNAP enrollment, so that they can actually build that face-to-face relationship, I think that there's so much negativity, just like whether it's true or not, but with like HRA and with the SNAP enrollment offices and how people are treated. I think that funding more community-based organizations to be that warm hand that helps to bridge that gap, to help get people who might be hesitant, but they're eligible, enrolled in SNAP. I also think the city needs to do a better job with the processing rates, right? There's been a lot in the news. Apparently it's cleared up, but according to my team, people are still waiting long periods of time. From the time their application submitted, it's supposed to be less than 30 days, and it's certainly, it has not been perfect, and I think the city can do a better job with that. I also think that during COVID, there was a boost to the benefit levels. And so I think if we increase the minimum benefits, seniors might see more value in and be able to, purchase more dignified foods with their SNAP dollars. Because right now, most seniors, if you're just a single, senior, you're really not getting very much money on SNAP. And so how can we make it more like all the administrative, red tape, how could we make it more worth it for them, right? So I think there's that. And again, around like I love Jeanette's points about automatic enrollment and why we're making seniors recertify at all. I think those are really all very valid points. Right now, we're getting ready for the Farm Bill, and there's a lot of advocacy going on. So I think that we certainly at WISCA, but we all need to band together to really fight to make sure that SNAP is not only maintained but increased. So yeah, but in terms of our work at WISCA, it's really more about getting our staff out into the community, and hopefully reaching more of the older adults that might be hesitant, and getting them the benefits that they deserve.
Thanks. I want to remind the participants that the chat is now open for your questions, so feel free to jot them down and we'll be able to ask the panelists questions from the audience. But I want to ask one last question to everyone, and we'll go to Cindy, Allison, then Jeanette. And it's an open-ended question. We asked our survey participants and focus group members to sort of tell us what their vision is of a service that they would like. And I'm going to ask something similar. What's your vision for how New York City can best meet older adult food needs? And I know you've mentioned a whole bunch of programs and policies and ideas, but in the ideal world, what would food nutrition services for older adults look like? So Cindy, what would you like to see in the next several years?
I'd like to see the programs evolve and address the current needs, but like the incoming needs, right? Like, I feel like our programs have been the same as it was 20, 30 years ago, providing the 1 meal a day, that's 1/3 RDA with fat-free milk. Like, we need to kind of diversify that a bit more and open it up to different types of deliveries, different types of scheduling for food service, different food offerings. I think it just needs to evolve with we don't have to do future stuff because we don't know about that yet, but we can at least do what we know is kind of working. And I'm sure our program isn't the only program that's doing these little things to, kind of address certain needs, but also provide for our participants.
Thanks. And Allison, you mentioned a whole bunch of different ideas that WISCA is implementing and would like to implement. What would your vision be? What one or two innovations would I think make a difference in your mind?
Well, first, I just want to just say that I think the city needs to actually fund emergency food programs. Right now, Mayor Eric Adams is proposing over 50% cut of CFC, Community Food Connections. This is the city's emergency food program. It basically it's the backbone of the emergency feeding network in New York City. And they're proposing to more than halve this program, which is absolutely ridiculous in a time, of such great need. We just have heard all this data about senior hunger, but we are living in a time where there is an incredible migrant crisis, food inflation. We're still overcoming from the pandemic, and the city really needs to put dollars towards not only meeting the needs, but also funding innovation, right? So, similar to what Cindy was saying about how everything's just like the same old for the past, however many years, similar in the emergency feeding network. And how can the city use their resources to really fund collaboration and innovation to meet the unique needs of the different populations that live in New York City. And not just, just more, let's just getting shelf stable product out to all these little tiny pantries. I just think we need to be thinking outside the box, and funding technology, funding home delivery, funding smart lockers, funding the collaboration between groups like Whiska and Citymeals and Henry Street to put our heads together to figure out how are we going to meet the needs of the senior population. And I just think that the city hasn't really backed us all up in that regard. So I think we need to advocate. But I think we've heard a lot of great ideas on this panel today, and I just think the biggest limitation for all of us is the resources to get the work done.
So Jeanette, what are some out-of-the-box thoughts from Citymeals?
Well, I guess I should say that, our vision overall is that older New Yorkers have the nutrition that they need to safely age in place and really remain connected to their communities. And, our big goal coming out of this work is really to end elder hunger by 2040. Maybe not out of the box, but I do feel like it's time for a bigger vision of what we're trying to achieve. We're not just trying to get people one meal a day. We really do want to end hunger. And we see this as a solvable problem. But as Cindy and Allison have said, we really do need to evolve, and we need stronger partnerships to make that happen. So we really want to see the city move away from this one model that is old. Maybe this model worked in 1965, when the Older Americans Act was founded, but families are different. Life in New York City is different. And the ways that we get people food needs to change with the ways that we live now. And, this having a prepared meal delivered to a person every single day is necessary for some people, but it's not necessary for everyone. So that makes it really not even the most, efficient way to address hunger, right? So we really need this comprehensive strategy that incorporates, exactly that, a hot prepared meal delivered to a person's door, but really that just looks at other ways that we can get both the amount of food and the kinds of food that older adults need delivered directly to them. That is the extra step that is needed. It's not a nice to have, it's a need to have. We're not really going to be able to make a dent in this crisis, this hunger crisis, if we're not really meeting people's needs where they are.
And thank you. And Karen Karp in our audience asks an important question. We've been using the term older adults, but that covers a wide range of people from their 60s to into the hundreds. Are your thoughts on the different food needs and preferences of the different age groups within the older adult community? What are your thoughts on how to meet those different needs of people who are younger older adults and older adults? Jeanette, do you want to start us off?
Sure. As I said earlier, I think, aging is a dynamic process, right? And, I even would hesitate to say that all of the older adults have certain food needs and all the older adults have different ones. It changes. It depends on their health, and it depends on the, other factors in their lives, and, how connected they are to other food resources. What we saw also in this survey is that, again, some folks who can make it out to an older adult center every day might still have a challenge with cooking or preparing certain kinds of food. So, and that can vary by age. Of course, as you get older, you're likely to face more barriers. But for some people, those barriers come, pretty early on. So I do think that we need to we need to have solutions that both allow people to express their own individual needs and their own preferences within within the models that exist, right? So if you are able to do some cooking, then we want programs that can actually provide fresh produce, pantry items, all the different things that they need in order to be able to make those meals. But we also want to be able to craft solutions that can adapt with them for the days. They'll have good days and bad days, right? There are going to be some bad days where they can't really kind of do much more than boil an egg and make some rice. And we want to make sure that they have the food to do that, but then that we can also support them when they are able to do more at whatever stage of life they're in.
And Cindy and Allison, I'm just curious, do your organizations have different types of programming or services for different age groups of older adults, or is it a consistent service for all of those who qualify for your meal programs? Cindy, do you?
Well, we have an older adult center, which is a day nutrition program where they can come in and have meals. And that's for a younger, more active older adults. And then we have our home delivered meal program, which is so the two groups.
And Allison, do you differentiate in terms of emergency food?
Well, I think what is exciting, well, I think it's all about providing choice, right? Because I don't think we can generalize, and everyone has like their own unique dietary needs, cultural food preferences, ability to chew hard foods, you name it. But I think like what's exciting is that health Medicaid is now going to begin reimbursing community-based organizations for providing not only like regular pantry foods, but also medically tailored groceries and medically tailored meals. And so I think this is an incredible model where, if there is a senior who does require like medical nutrition therapy, like they require a mechanically soft diet, or they require a diet that's appropriate for diabetes or heart disease, or you name it, there's now going to be a mechanism for properly reimbursing community organizations, like whether that be WISCA or Citymeals or, even Henry Street, to be able to, source that food and be able to provide that food to seniors so that, we're not only meeting their food security needs, but like actually their specific dietary concerns. And so that is something that waiver just passed in New York State. And we're hopeful that sometime this calendar year, that this will begin. And I think it will allow for a lot of organizations to be able to provide a greater level of choice because there is that funding mechanism there.
Thanks. I actually have a question for Katie. So Sylvia Sichter said this is a great study on older adult hunger, and they noticed there were no zip codes from Staten Island in the survey results. How can we be sure that people from all boroughs are covered? And I think this is a general question about the methods and the complexity of doing this kind of research. I wonder if you could comment on that.
I guess my first response would be, we really worked with the Citymeals network of partners, and we had to rely on them to respond and be engaged and participate and frankly use their time and energy to help us reach these folks. And that is not a small ask. And so I think we did put up kind of a broad call, and we worked with those who were able and had the time and capacity to work with us. I think a future study with more funding, I would always say, let's do this study bigger. Let's reach more older adults, and let's make sure that we are maybe financially incentivizing partners to help us engage. That would be, I think, a next level way to do it. Jeanette, I would love your thoughts on kind of whether, I don't know the nuances of your network and where folks are, but absolutely it is something that we would like to address and include in the future. And you know, I think another vision would be like doing a fully randomized sample of all New Yorkers. So not just those who use these services. This was, you know, a convenience sample. We intentionally wanted to hear from these folks, but you could design another study where you were asking all older adults in the city and trying to reach them in some way. So I think there's levels of scale for this and more questions we could ask. And I think for me, you know, good research brings up more questions and prompts for more research. So absolutely, it's a great question and one I hope we can address in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. And from the same participant, there's a question about how can we ensure that food services are more culturally competent, such as providing halal meal options for older adults. Jeanette, could you comment on that and what kinds of options that Citymeals currently offers?
Right. Well, right now, Citymeals offers essentially, you know, we follow the guidelines that are set by the city Department for the Aging, right? Which means that we are able to provide meals that are kosher, halal. There are Caribbean meals, there are Latin meals, there are vegetarian meals and some vegan meals. But you know, essentially that all, City could probably speak to that as well, the ways that they have to, that they determine what those needs are. But one thing I also want to say is that right now the city pays for the meals on a per meal reimbursement rate. You know, all providers are reimbursed $12.78 per meal for the meals that they provide. But cultural meals, culturally appropriate meals are often more expensive than other meals to provide. And so, you know, providers are usually left to make up that difference on their own, which, you know, is really not going to help providers to give as many different options when it comes to culturally appropriate foods. So I do think that the city, you know, if they're going to be requiring this, they really do need to be paying the full cost of the different varieties of meals that are necessary to meet that need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. We have a question from Kelvin Gorvan. I apologize if I am mispronouncing your name. And I'll direct it to Allison because it's about the Plentiful app. And he asks, is it effective in alleviating lines and waiting at New York food banks and other distribution sites? Maybe you can speak for just a minute about what Plentiful is and is it a useful tool for increasing service?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Plentiful is an online tool, an app that helps pantries to, make their customer records electronic. So basically, it's a customer management system, and it allows the pantries to make appointments for customers. So this way, the goal of it is so that everybody's not showing up at 7 a.m. for a 10 o'clock distribution and waiting in a long line. The idea is to give customers an appointment. So, you know, maybe there's 10 customers who come in at 8, 10 that come in at 9, you know, it spaces it out to hopefully reduce that line. I think from my perspective and having used the tool at Wisca for a period of time, I think the benefit is mostly for the smaller pantries that have been keeping paper-based records. This is a very easy tool for them to finally have records online, and they can, you know, pull some basic reports, which is key for funding, and you know, to secure additional funding. I think there's certainly a lot of pantries who have found success in utilizing Plentiful for maintaining, you know, for decreasing the line. But I think you know, it's challenging. I don't think it's like cut and dry in terms of the effectiveness, but I do think it's an incredible tool for helping some of the smaller volunteer-based pantries to have electronic records of their customers and manage their customer data.
Thank you. Everyone spoke about the need for advocacy, and Karen Karp raises an important question. Like, what advocacy is needed for public awareness building about the needs of older adult New Yorkers? And I would add to that, do you currently engage your clients, members in advocacy, or are there opportunities for them to engage in public policy advocacy at the city, state, maybe even federal level? I'll start with you, Cindy. Does Grant Street engage in any kind of advocacy or help members advocate for their needs?
We do letter writing campaigns with them when the budgets are up. We coordinate them to go to City Hall and advocate for themselves. For our homebound, we send out letters, give them numbers to call if they choose to call and advocate for themselves. So we do participate in some level in advocacy.
Mm-hmm. How about at WSCA, Allison? Are you engaging people in getting them out to talk to legislators or?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, just maybe 2 weekends ago, we had our annual WSCA Rocks the Block event, where it's a huge block party that we host on 86th Street on the Upper West Side. And we had frac there, and we were doing a paper plate campaign where all of the participants of the event were writing messages to the mayor about the CFC cuts and hopefully telling him not to cut funding for emergency food programs. Also, just yesterday, we had one of our we have several customers that are on our board of directors. So people who are receiving food and benefits from WSCA who are on our board of directors. And just yesterday, Greg and one of our customer board members, Martina, were testifying down at City Hall on the food insecurity hearing. Next week, I'm going down to the FRAC conference, or the National Anti-Hunger Conference in Washington, D.C. And I will be moderating a panel with another one of our customer board members. And then we will be going to the Hill and advocating with some of our elected officials. So yeah, we are continually trying to find ways of engaging our customer base to advocate for the policies that affect them. And so yeah, it's been it's been a lot of fun and effective, I think.
Great. And Jeanette, Citymeals
Mhm.
advocacy, and do you think that your clients would be interested in engaging in advocacy?
Oh, yeah. I think, and I'm sure Cindy has seen the same, older adults are often very willing to tell you how they feel about things. And we really want to harness that power. So that is something that we've started talking about. There are definitely challenges when you're trying to reach people who maybe don't leave their home that much, or have limited access to technology and things like that. So it's something we're starting to explore, because I really do think that their voices need to be heard. It's hard to ignore a problem when you see it. And these are folks who, again, if they're not out there, they're not being seen and heard. And it's easy to, kind of pretend that this problem doesn't really exist, or that it isn't as big as it is. It doesn't seem as big a problem when everyone's behind closed doors, right? So really want to think about how we can do more of that in the future, especially as we are looking for bigger advocacy campaigns to get more funding for more programs and more food.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thanks. So we're coming to the end of our time for this session, but I'd like to give the panelists any final opportunities to raise any issues that haven't been raised, or to say any final thoughts about moving forward in improving nutrition and food access for older adults.
Well, I would just like to encourage all of the listeners to come help us out at WISCA, come volunteer with us. I think that's just, one small way of, helping older adults gain access to food. We have a new warehouse facility in Washington Heights, and we need volunteer support up there. So please visit our website to find out ways to volunteer. Oh, and also in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks. Cindy or Jeanette, any final thoughts?
My final thoughts are I'm a little bit encouraged right now, hearing the study, and glad that we're starting to think about kind of revolutionary ways of changing how the systems that we're doing now. Yeah, I'm very encouraged by it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Jeanette, you have the final word.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think it's just, I just want to say again that, elder hunger is a solvable problem. We just need the political will, and great partners, like the folks here on this panel, to really do what it takes, to have the right programs that reach everyone in need with the amount of food that they need. It's not rocket science. We just need to work together, and I'm excited to do the advocacy and to work with all of these folks and more partners across the city, state, and federal levels, to make sure that we can really end hunger by 2040.
Well, thank you. I'm really encouraged too by all the innovative ideas that have been, talked about during this panel discussion, and the possibility of groups collaborating to solve the issue of hunger for older adults. And the Institute, has been delighted to be a partner with Citymeals and WISCA over the years, and will continue to provide the research support for all of your good work. So without further ado, I'm just looking at the chat. Okay, there's a question: will there be contact information shared for the panelists? The participants have your contact information, and we will try to share back with you the list of participants who have registered for this event. So again, thank you all for your participation today, and thanks for working with us over the years. Thanks again, Katie, for leading this study, and this is the beginning of a conversation that I think will continue over the next few years. So thanks again for coming. Thanks to all the audience members. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.